The pharmacist slid the bag back across the counter. She leaned forward, dropped her voice low, and said, "Sir, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." My daughter-in-law Yvonne was standing right beside me. Her hand was already reaching for the bag. The pharmacist's eyes moved from the bag to Yvonne, then slowly, deliberately, back to me. There was something in her face that wasn't routine concern. It was a warning dressed up as a question. That's when I realized she wasn't asking to make conversation. She was trying to tell me something. My name is Gerald. I'm 64 years old, and for 38 years I stood behind a counter exactly like that one. I know what a pharmacist looks like when they're just doing their job. I also know what they look like when they've found something wrong and they're not sure how to say it out loud. I spent nearly 4 decades learning the difference. I retired 3 years ago. 38 years of filling prescriptions, counseling patients, catching dosage errors before they became emergencies. I knew drug interactions the way some men know baseball statistics. It wasn't just work, it was how I understood the world: cause, effect, intervention, outcome. My wife passed 6 years ago, breast cancer. I handled it the way I handled most things, by staying useful, staying focused, staying upright. My 2 sons, Derek and his younger brother Paul, both live full lives of their own. Derek and his wife Yvonne live about 40 minutes from where I used to own my home. 18 months ago, I had a mild stroke. It was minor, medically speaking, some weakness on my left side for a few weeks, a small gap in my speech that resolved with therapy. My neurologist was clear. With medication and monitoring, I had every expectation of a normal, independent life. But my family heard something different. The moment the word stroke entered the conversation, I became a project. Derek suggested I sell my house and move in with them, just for a while. I agreed because I was still finding my footing, and because I trusted my son. They treated that trust like a deed of ownership. I wasn't the man in the white coat anymore, but I still knew exactly what every pill was for, and I knew exactly what happened when doses were wrong. If you've ever had a health scare, a diagnosis, a fall, a surgery, you know how fast the people around you can shift. One day you're the person they come to for advice. The next, they're speaking about you in the third person while you're still in the room. Has someone in your life ever used your vulnerability as an opportunity? If that question hit somewhere specific, stay with me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and click hype if you believe experience still counts for something, even after life knocks you sideways. The pharmacist's name was Tara. I could see it on her badge. She was young, maybe late 20s, with careful eyes and the kind of measured voice you develop when you've had to deliver difficult information more than once. I recognized the training in her posture. She pulled up my refill history on her screen, turned it slightly toward me, and asked in a low, professional tone whether anyone else had been managing my medication or calling in changes on my behalf. I said no. Yvonne handled the scheduling for my doctor appointments, yes, but my prescriptions were mine. I called them in myself. Always had. Tara was quiet for a moment. Then she walked me through what she was seeing on the screen. Over the past 5 months, someone had called the pharmacy 3 separate times requesting dosage adjustments to my anti-anxiety medication. Not my blood pressure prescription, the other one. Each call was made by someone who identified themselves as my home caregiver. Each adjustment moved the dosage progressively higher. I don't have a home caregiver. I never authorized one. No such arrangement exists in any document I've signed. I stood very still. Behind the counter, I used to watch patients go still like that when something they hadn't expected became real. Now I understood. It's not disbelief, it's the body buying itself one more second before everything reorganizes. Yvonne, standing 2 feet to my left, started talking. Her voice got louder than the situation required. She was performing, not to Tara, to the 2 people standing in line behind us. Tara did not look at Yvonne. She looked at me and slid a folded piece of paper across the counter along with my prescription bag. She told me, quietly, that she had already flagged my account. No further changes could be processed without my verified in-person authorization. She also told me the printed paper was a copy of the call log, dates, times, and a summary of what was requested during each contact. I picked it up. I put it in my jacket pocket. I thanked her. I meant it more than she knew. That evening, I asked Derek about the calls. I was calm. I had the paper in my pocket, and I chose not to show it. I simply asked, in a normal voice over dinner, whether he knew anything about changes to my anti-anxiety prescription in the past few months. Derek didn't hesitate. He said I had asked Yvonne to help manage my medication after the stroke because I was overwhelmed. He said it as though he were reminding me of a dentist appointment. Matter of fact, patient. The tone people use when they've rehearsed something and want it to sound unrehearsed. I told him I had no memory of asking that. He looked at me across the table with something between pity and satisfaction and said that was kind of the point, wasn't it? That my memory wasn't always reliable anymore, that they were just trying to fill in the gaps. I didn't argue. I finished my dinner. The second thing I found out hit harder because it involved my doctor. I had a follow-up appointment scheduled for the following week. When I arrived, my physician pulled up our shared records and mentioned almost casually that it was good to finally meet with you directly, given what we had discussed at the family session last month. I asked her what family session. She stopped, a real stop, not a pause. She told me that Derek and Yvonne had come in 4 weeks ago for a conversation about my long-term care needs. They discussed the possibility of transitioning me to assisted living within the year. My doctor had proceeded under the assumption that I knew about the meeting and had chosen not to attend. I had not known. No one had told me. I had been discussed, assessed, and partially decided about without a single word said to my face. The third thing I found on a Thursday afternoon when Derek was at work and Yvonne was out. I wasn't snooping. I went into Derek's home office to borrow a stapler. The papers were on the desk, not in a drawer. A partially drafted power of attorney document. My name at the top, Derek's name beneath it, listed as authorized agent for both financial decisions and medical consent. It wasn't signed, but it was drafted, and it wasn't new. The date in the header was 112 weeks old. I thought about all 3 things together, the medication being adjusted to keep me slower and softer, the private meeting to frame me as already declining, the document ready and waiting for a signature. Each piece fit the next. This wasn't worry. This wasn't even misguided love. This was a coordinated effort to reclassify me before I had a chance to object. At dinner that same week, Derek looked at me across the table and said, "Dad, we just want what's best for you. You're not as sharp as you used to be." I looked back at him and said, "You might be surprised." What they didn't realize was that I had spent 40 years in pharmacy. I know what elevated sedatives do to a person at my age. I know the difference between natural cognitive slowing and chemically induced fog. I had been watching myself for months, noting the days I felt heavier than the day before, the mornings my thoughts arrived slower than they should. I had attributed it to age. I was wrong. It was dosage. 6 weeks after moving into Derek's house, I had started keeping a small notebook. Nothing dramatic, just dates and notes. The times Yvonne reminded me I had already taken my pill when I was certain I hadn't. The evening my blood pressure medication looked slightly different than usual, and Yvonne said the pharmacy had switched manufacturers. The day I found my pill organizer rearranged in a pattern I didn't use. I wrote it down because I wasn't sure enough to act,